Space living. Everything from your outpost to your ships to even who you live with, aka your crew members. There is a lot of things that we need to go over in today's video, so before we start I do want to give a shout out to my boy Red Wolf Renegade for the idea of this video. He makes awesome Starfield content, so go and check him out. If you don't know who he is, there will be a link to his channel in the description below. But back to the topic at hand, space living. As my boy Red Wolf said in his video, in every single space game, movie, show, comic book or any kind of media really, there's always one aspect of space that's never really explored, and that of course is space living. Actually living in a spaceship, living on a hostile planet, and things that you would need to do to survive to actually be able to live in the dangers of space. Look, I personally believe that Starfield will dive deep into this aspect of space realism mixed with a tiny bit of fantasy, and we even have some evidence to point towards it. Now of course we have had other games where you clearly live on a ship, but none of those games have had the physics and the mechanics of a Bethesda game. And we've also heard how Bethesda's ship interiors have taken a quote lo-fi rather than sci-fi appeal. Now of course during this scene we can see that there are plenty of things on our ship's interiors to give it a homey feel and look, such as the old cracked helmet that keeps popping up, or this weird rock that we have on display, or even just old junk laying around. Now we do know that we can walk around our ships while it's flying through the vastness of space, which is actually something really wild for Bethesda, because our ships aren't just a cell. We will basically be walking around buildings as it moves itself throughout the map. Of course we have to assume that firstly we won't be able to move around during a grav jump, because that just wouldn't make much sense anyway, and secondly that our ships will stay idle or maybe orbiting a planet or moon if we leave the controls without putting one of our many crew members on the pilot job. And we also really want to point out that besides Outpost and the Dream Home trait, we actually have zero idea if we can buy actual houses in Starfield, at least in the cities. Now I have mentioned before that I would love to be able to buy a house in New Atlantis, a penthouse apartment in Neon, and sort of like a rustic cabin in Aquila City, but we don't know if any of that's going to be the case. That's just in my wish list, I guess. So basically what I'm getting at is that for a lot of builds we could just be living in our ships, especially if you want to do a smuggler build, a pirate build, or a rogue loner build, or something along those lines, right? So this is of course forcing us to sort of use our ship as our home, meaning we will probably have areas such as living areas, of course, kitchens and even bathrooms all on our ships, which isn't all that surprising considering how massive we can make our ships, but it's still worth pointing out. But even on top of all of that, we know that the shipbuilding mechanic in Starfield is very in-depth, at least it looks like it will be. We will likely be building rooms just for science, rooms just for crafting, rooms just for storage, rooms just to display our weapons, etc, etc, the list goes on. Much like how in Skyrim's Hellfire DLC, we could choose, hey, do I want this room to be an armory or an alchemy lab, or a library, or a green room? You know, you get the point. And yes, I do believe that Starfield shipbuilding will be that vast, especially when you look at how much has been shown off, and we still don't actually know that much about shipbuilding. Now I do have to wonder just how much Bethesda will focus on the realism of this though. It would be awesome to, you know, make your character sleep for 8 hours, but wake up like 2 hours later because the idiot pilot that you put in charge of flying your home, aka your ship, accidentally flew into an asteroid field or something like that. I mean, there has to be a reason that crew members have different skill sets in piloting, right? So maybe if you put a crew member with low piloting skill on piloting, things like this will happen. But that of course takes us to outposts. If you don't want to live on a spaceship, then guess what? You don't have to. You can set up like 100 outposts and just go and stay at those whenever you wanted. Or you can do what I plan to do and just have one massive outpost fit for all your needs. Again, we do need to also take into consideration living in the dangers of space on a planet or moon instead of a spaceship. Because what if you decide to build an outpost on a planet with, I don't know, say extremely low oxygen levels? Will we then have to keep our spacesuits on at all times because of this? Meaning that we won't be able to have this certain outpost as a home due to it not being in a livable state? Or will Bethesda completely ignore this and just let us build wherever we want and just say, yeah, don't think about it too much? The question I'm really asking is, how real will Bethesda take Starfield? Because I mean, look, I'm very excited for a somewhat realistic space game, but I don't want it to be too realistic. For example, we know in real life the astronauts on the ISS have to drink water made from each other's recycled urine, which I imagine is never a fun time. Now of course, I don't think we'll have to do things like this in Starfield. I very much doubt and very much hope that it won't be that in depth, but considering in Starfield we can also get orange juice if we'd like, it's still a question that I need answered, you know? How real will space living be? Now, one of the things I am definitely the most excited for is standing up in my cockpit, walking over to my living area and staring out of a giant glass window at the emptiness and vastness of space. I seriously cannot wait to do that in Starfield, and that's of course just one very small part of an overall massive game. And we have also seen that some spaceships have plants growing on them in green room-like areas. So are we gonna have to do that if we want to live in our ships? Of course, we don't know still if eating and drinking is a requirement in Starfield for us to survive. We do know that the default game mode is not a survival mode, but we also know that our character can still suffer from infections and broken bones and diseases and other things like that. So it's kind of like a regular game mode with some slight survival mechanics built in, if that makes any kind of sense. Which again is why I keep asking the question of how real will it be like living in space in Starfield? Do I need to worry about my oxygen tank running low? I know Bethesda said that they fully changed around the fuel system now, but do I still need to get fuel for certain things? We clearly can have beds, kitchens and other home areas in our ships, but could I build a home without all of that? If I have a small house to always go back to? All questions I would really like answered, but I guess we'll find it all out soon enough as we're getting closer and closer to Starfield's release. We've got less than 2 months to go until Starfield's release, so if you do want to stay up to date or catch up on everything Starfield, my channel is absolutely the place for you. We have plenty of Starfield discussions and breakdowns here, and we'd love to have you join us, so consider subscribing, it really would mean a lot. Also, please do drop the video a like for me, if you did enjoy it of course, and a massive thank you as always to our amazing channel members for sticking with me month after month. It means the absolute world, guys, so thank you. And another big thank you to my boy Red Wolf, again for the idea of this entire video. But with all of that said and done, I thank you all so much for watching, and I really hope to see you next time. Peace.